Joining me today on another episode of The Gray Area, he is your guy, my favorite guy, Jared Sandler, Rangers insider, and of course of 105 through the fan. Jared, how are you today?
KG, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, man. Good to talk to you once again. I always love talking to Jared because Jared, I feel like in some ways is a kindred spirit of mine. So it's always good to talk to Jared. So some good news on the Rangers front as we kind of jump into the conversation here. Isiah Kiner-Falefa and Joey Gallo win their first ever Gold Glove awards. Joey Gallo, of course, in right field. Isiah Kiner-Falefa at third base in a season that was ultimately disappointing for the Rangers on a lot of fronts. How excited is this for Rangers fans to know that, you got a couple of guys out here that even in a disappointing season really was able to come through, especially on the defensive side of the baseball?
No, I think there are a couple things of interest here for me. The first is that, some guys win gold gloves and it's, hey, just old news because they've done it now 4, 5, 6 times. It's just like, all right, hey, it's another gold glove for the collection. I think this one, I think anytime a guy wins a gold glove for the first time, that's special. But let's take Nolan Arenado. Nolan Arenado at some point won his first gold glove, but I think it was like expected, right? Like everyone knew like this guy is special defensively. Matt Chapman, same sort of deal. You think of these guys who have racked up a ton of gold gloves. Kevin Kiermaier, a guy who's won the platinum glove maybe twice, but certainly once. What's special with these two is that with Izzy, and he even said it yesterday after winning it. He's like, I might never get a chance to win it again because he plays a million positions. He might never play one position enough to be in the running for a gold glove. And he also, was thrown behind the plate. And it was very much a, listen, I'm going to do whatever the organization asks of me. It was not I'm fully pumped to, be a catcher and I totally am on board with this. But it was like, hey, this is what they want to do. Want me to do, this is what I have to do. I know he was super excited to just get a chance to be an infielder for an entire season. And it just worked out that he got a chance to basically play one position because neither Ronald Guzman nor Greg Bird really won the first base job. And so Todd Frazier played first, Izzy played third, and, that's how we got to where we were and I guess are. With Joey, he's for years now said, I'm more than just a hitter. Everyone always talks about boom or bust or whatever. And the reality is a lot of the boom or bust guys, years ago, and when I say years ago, I don't mean in the 80s or 90s. I mean, 10 years ago, like the Adam Dunns of the world, the Richie Sextons of the world, they didn't really offer a ton defensively. And so I think that Joey was sort of victimized by his predecessors and being labeled in that way. Joey's a really good outfielder. And the Gold Glove Award maybe validates that nationally. Neither guy needed the Gold Glove to validate what they bring defensively, but it was definitely cool and deserved. And, the other thing that's interesting is that offense played a really big part of this. For Izzy, if he doesn't hit well enough, he doesn't play every day.
Mm-hmm.
He needed the offense to be able to win this. And for Joey, it's significant because his offense was not very good this year. And it was how he was able to contribute to the team in a positive way. He really was a big impact defensively. So it was really cool. It's special for both those guys. Again, don't know if Izzy will be in this position again because he can play so many positions. And for Joey, I'd expect that he wins more of these because this is not a fluke. He is a really, really good outfielder, specifically in right field, and his arm, whatever speed he maybe doesn't have that, say, a Mookie Betts does in right field, Joey's arm makes up for it because he keeps runners from even attempting to take extra bases because of that arm, and that's valuable.
Does Isiah Kiner-Falefa's winning of a Gold Glove complicate his value in terms of him being a part of the future of this Rangers ball club? Or is it just something that continues to reinforce that this is a guy that could be a part of the long-term future of this baseball team?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the Rangers fully intend on him being a part of the future. I think it's just, in what role, right? So Izzy made great strides this year offensively, and he's young, and because of the catching thing in which, when you're just being a catcher in general, doesn't lend to tremendous offensive growth at the same rate for another position. Now, when you're having to learn the catching position, all right, you're not a catcher, you're learning the catching position, hitting takes such a back seat. And so it's tough to take Izzy's lack of progress in 18 and 19 and look into it. But this past year as an infielder, he really got to focus on hitting. He even talked about it. Like, this past offseason, I was selfish. I no longer had to worry about playing the catching spot, so I could just work on me and my hitting. And, he showed improvement. Now, if he doesn't continue to improve, then he's probably not an everyday player on a team that's going to contend for a World Series. In a year with a lot of growth offensively, he still had an OPS below 700. He had a slugging percentage at 370. That's not an everyday player type of production. Now, Izzy's got the profile from like an intangible standpoint. This is a guy who busts his tail. He's incredibly disciplined. You got to get him out of the cage as opposed to push him into the cage. And so I think you've got to leave room for, continued growth. I think what Izzy has shown, though, is that as a floor, this is a major league player. And this was not a guarantee at this time last year. At this time last year, the conversation was, I don't know if Izzy's going to be on the opening day roster. He earned that, and I think he's shown he's a major league player. And I think maybe for a really good team, if the offense doesn't progress, he's your 10th guy, and a 10th guy still plays a big role on really good teams. A 10th guy is still probably going to start more than half the games, and because he's so versatile, one of 5 guys could get injured, and he could fit that spot. Or he could fit the spot that's vacated by the person fitting that spot. So, sure. And as defense becomes more and more valuable, especially when you play in a park that's not a launch pad like Globe Life Field is not, that there's a place. So I think Izzy this year, what he really accomplished, he didn't put himself in stone as a starter for years to come. But I think he solidified that he's a major league player, and he's not going to go into camp next year having to earn a major league spot.
It's going to be a very interesting offseason for this Rangers club as they have declined, of course, the option on Corey Kluber. And it seems like there will only be a real handful of teams that will do the kind of major spending that they are capable of doing. From your vantage point, what do you see as the Rangers' kind of mode of operation going into this offseason with respect to certain individuals that gives them a better indication that they can foundationally be able to start to put the pieces together going into 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, so they're in a weird spot, right? What do fans want when your team's not good? They want you to spend because they want you to get players who are established and good.
Yeah.
I think the question that's of most importance is how many years away do the Rangers feel like they are from competing legitimately, not just for a playoff spot, but for the division? Because when you compete for the division, you're also competing for a lesser playoff spot. I think the reason why that's important is, and I don't know what their answer is. I don't know internally, and I think that this upcoming year could shift that. Your clock, your window is, always evolving. But in free agency, maybe in baseball more than any other sport, because of the way free agency works. And quickly on that, a lot of guys don't become free agents like George Springer until they're north of 30, because you have to go through 6 years before you get to free agency. Mm-hmm. And you're not starting that 6-year clock at 21 or 22 right out of college or right out of high school or, whatever. You're starting that clock once you make it to the majors.
Yeah.
And so because of that, a lot of these free agents, they're, like Luka. When Luka signs his Supermax, he will be in his prime throughout the entirety of that contract. Mm-hmm. His first big free agent contract, he'll be in his prime throughout the entirety of that. A guy like George Springer, who's one of the best free agent position players in the class, is not going to likely be in his prime throughout the entirety of whatever contract he signs because he's north of 30. He might have 2 or 3 good years. So the key here with free agency is you want to sign guys when you can time it up to where they are still in their prime when you are competing for, not necessarily only for a World Series, but now we're back competing for a division. We're back competing for a pennant. And I just don't know that it makes a lot of sense for the Rangers to spend big on a guy who might be great for the next 2 to 3 years, but the Rangers are more than one player away from competing for fill in the blank. And by the time they're ready, this guy's now trending downward. You don't want that, because then you're stuck with his money for, another 2 to 3 years. And that's
yeah.
So as far as like what offseason moves, a couple things. One, there's a kid from South Korea, shortstop, who can play other positions, which I think is important because there are going to be some really, really good shortstops available next year who I think the Rangers would be interested in. But his name is, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing this correctly, but Ha-Sung Kim, or Seung Kim. He's unique because he's 25 years old. And so you're going to get a lot of prime year. If you sign him to a 6-year deal, he in theory should be in his prime through the entirety of that deal.
Sure.
So he's the type of candidate. The other thing is, you're married, Kevin. Your wife, you're walking around or whatever. Your wife's got no intention of buying something, and then all of a sudden you see something on sale, and oh my gosh, like that belt is usually $5 million, and we can get it for 50. I mean, that's the point of sales, right? They lure you in.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know inadvertently what sort of sales are going to be out there because of the market. How you would typically value guys in a normal offseason could be different this offseason. So there's a chance that a guy's value drops to the point where maybe the Rangers like, listen, there's no harm in trying to get this guy. But I do think that most of the Rangers' activity will be on the trade front. And this upcoming year will be an evaluation year. And it's, what do we have do we want to pay Joey? We need another full season to determine that. What do we have in Leody Taveras? Is he our center fielder of the future? Is he a leadoff hitter, for the future? Or is he more of a bottom of the order guy? Anderson Tejeda, Josh Young, Sherten Apostle, Sam Huff. These guys are going to get a lot of opportunities. And then also guys on the mound, Brock Burke, when he gets healthy, Colby Allard, Joe Palumbo can stay healthy, Kyle Cody. What do we have in these guys? And that will inform them what activity is necessary moving forward. I don't see the Rangers going out and getting a lot of established guys right now who, by the time the Rangers are ready to compete again, are going to be on the decline. And the last thing, someone might be saying, well, what if you get 3 or 4 of those guys? Isn't that enough? Maybe, but this team financially isn't in a position to throw that type of money to 3 or 4 guys. I don't know if any team this offseason is in the position to do a supermarket sweep of the top free agents.
It's a good game show, by the way. Supermarket.
I love
Sweep.
it. Honestly, Supermarket Sweep are my 2 favorites.
It's funny the way that you're describing the Rangers and their approach, especially with their young players, sounds a lot like the Dallas Cowboys these days with respect to how they're operating. Maybe obviously out of necessity, more so than, hey, we want to look at the future down the road because, the Cowboys are dealing with what they're dealing with. Speaking of the Cowboys real quick, look, if you don't know, Jared loves to text me every now and then and say, hey, how's that Mike McCarthy thing working out for you so far? I say, hey, look, man, I'm just telling you what Jerry told you, who he wanted as a head coach. But ultimately, it's been a comedy of errors for this football team. But at the same time, they've really gone through some real adversity this season. Do you see this team next year and beyond being able to overcome this with this head coach based on what you know about him?
Yeah, so listen, I'm a Packers fan. It's not a secret. So I do have experience with Mike McCarthy. At the end of the day, Mike McCarthy helped the Packers win a Super Bowl. After his first year, I think he won nearly 70% of his games. All right. We've seen bad coaches have some degree of success, but it's not sustainable. And we've seen really bad coaches take a good roster and just sink. I mean, the Browns hired their backup water boy to be their head coach last year in Freddie Kitchen, and we saw how disastrous that turned out.
Right.
So, Mike McCarthy's not a putz. All right. He's not an awful coach. Is he the best coach in the NFL? No. Is he a top 5 to 7 coach in the NFL? My thought is no, based on what I saw at the end of his time in Green Bay. But is he a better coach than Jason Garrett? I think so, yes. I think you can point to a lot. Jason Garrett did a great job in the locker room. All right. I think that once the ball was kicked off on Sundays, Thursdays, Mondays, and the occasional Saturdays, that's where the Cowboys were more often than not at a disadvantage. I think Mike McCarthy will maybe put the Cowboys in neutral in that regard, and every once in a while they might be at an advantage. This is a tough year for a new coach with a new defensive coordinator, with COVID and all that stuff. So I'm going to give him a pass. I do think that the reaction from the locker room was pretty crummy on the players' part because those guys have sucked. Let's just be honest. I went on a famous rant on a Rangers post-game show once saying it's about the players. And while football, there's maybe more in-game influence of the head coach than in baseball, at the end of the day, the Cowboys do not have the Jimmies and Joes on defense to have any level of success. They just don't. So I'm optimistic it will get better for Mike McCarthy. If Cowboys fans are expecting a Super Bowl caliber head coach, you might fall short of that. I don't know if he's that guy. I think he had Aaron Rodgers, who is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and that helped. I think that with where the Cowboys are from a personnel standpoint, the draft is going to be really important because we've seen in the NFL, when you're picking as high as the Cowboys are going to pick, you can add a Pro Bowl player from day one if you make the right selection. You and I are on the same page. We're Dak guys. Now, do I have concerns about Dak's ankle? Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's a pretty significant injury. But to me, you move forward unless your evaluation, and this is where, neither you nor I can really, make these decisions. When the guys who are paid to do this, if their evaluations of Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence or, I don't think Trey Lance, but, any of these guys, if it is like, hey, this guy's better than Dak. Like maybe year one he won't be, but by year two he's better than Dak. It's tough to pass on those guys because those guys aren't available at 16 or 21 or 27. Not that those guys don't get drafted there, but it's tough to find those guys. But unless you feel that way, you better draft an impact player somewhere. Not a receiver, not a running back. Hopefully a defensive player is available who makes sense there because this defense desperately needs it. And until they start adding talent defensively, you could put Bill Belichick on the sidelines and it won't really matter.
The Cowboys get to host TJ Watt and the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming Sunday. Great. Before we get you out of here, what's coming up for you, Jared? I know you've got a lot of things on the plate as far as the Sandlot is concerned. What do you got going on here over the next several weeks as we get closer to the end of 2020?
Well, pulling my hair out, watching the Cowboys. Hoping. I'm curious. So if Ben DiNucci is the sidearm guy, I'm curious how Garrett Gilbert has evolved from his Texas and SMU days. Maybe he's going to, under him or something. I was really evolved in that regard. So, I appreciate you asking a few years ago started the Sandlot Children's Charity with the help of a few others to benefit kids with disabilities, to provide financial assistance so that they can take part in activities, specifically sports activities, to help with their growth, their physical fitness, their mental and physical health, leadership, communication, all the different things that can develop and grow through those experiences. And unfortunately for kids with disabilities, oftentimes the care of those individuals is incredibly expensive, or maybe the equipment for them to participate is incredibly expensive. You don't just use your everyday wheelchair for wheelchair basketball. You got to get a separate wheelchair, and it's not like a separate pair of basketball shoes. All right. Starberries aren't out there for $30. These wheelchairs are super expensive. And so it's something I really believe in. And there are a ton of great causes. I just say, like, I'd love for people to support what we do. There are a ton of amazing causes. And hopefully if you've got the resources financially, maybe the time, pick one, pick two, pick something and give back in some way. Would obviously love for you to do that with us. Our big event is usually at Topgolf. We get 250, 300 people out there, a lot of celebrities. It's a really fun early, late afternoon, early evening on a Sunday. This year we're doing it virtually. You're going to have Darren Woodson, Pudge, and Marty Turco as our featured guests, and just going to be an hour in front of a computer, a cooking demonstration from Chef Samir, Nick and Sam's. We'll have some trivia. and just have some fun and, hopefully raise a little bit of money and then get back on the horse next year with hopefully our normal routine and being able to give back. So I tweet a whole lot about it during the month of November. So just go to @Jared Sandler. You'll find all the details there, and would really appreciate if people wanted to participate.
Very cool. Jared, one of the hardest working men in this business, one of the folks that I love to talk to because Jared is about his business, and I appreciate the conversation with Jared. You can follow the Rangers Insider and, of course, 105 Through the Fan Zone, Jared Sandler on Twitter @Jared Sandler. Jared, thank you so much for the conversation. Be well, friend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.